In this section, we're going to look at relations. Relations mean any sort of relationship between two values or two variables, in our case, x and y. So if you have a relationship between x and y, it could be a set of points, an equation, a graph. Those all give us some sort of relationship between an x value and a y value. So specifically, we're going to talk about domain and range. Okay, so domain are all of the inputs to your relationship. So any value that is allowed to be put into your relation is in the domain. For simplicity, we're going to say all of the x values because x is usually our input. So all of the x values that are defined for your relationship, your relation. Okay, so all of the x values that are defined. The range would be all of the output values that you get when you put in all of the domain. So for simplicity's sake, we'll say all of the y values. Okay, so the domain is all of the x values, the range is all of the y values. So let's look at a couple of examples. So let's say we have a set of points. So let's say we have 1, 2, let's make it easy, 3, 4. Sorry, my pen jumps a little sometimes. 5, 6. Okay, so the domain would be the x values. And so that would be 1, 3, and 5. Okay, so we could say x equals 1, 3, 5. We could say the set of numbers 1, 3, 5. Okay, so these are specific values. 1, 3, and 5 are the answers. And then for the range, that would be the y values. So the y values are 2, 4, 6. So we could say y is equal to 2, 4, and 6. Or we could give it in set notation again with the curly brackets, 2, 4, and 6. Okay, so you use the curly brackets when it's a distinct set of numbers. So when you list them, if you can list a set of numbers, then you use the curly brackets. Okay, so that's what it looks like if you have a set of points. The x values are your domain, and the y values are your range. All right, let's look at another example. So you could also have an equation. We're not going to we're not going to jump into that just yet. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. You could have an equation and determine the domain and range. It's a little bit tougher. Let's look at a graph. Okay, so domain and range are a little bit easier to see when you're looking at a graph. So we talked about lines. Okay, so let's say that we have a line. So what would the domain and range be here? Well, what we're looking at is we're looking at all of the x values and all of the y values. All right, so you say, okay, what kind of x values do I have? I go from left to right. So the domain, I go x values, left to right. Okay, so I start on the left and say, all right, how far to the left I go? Well, I have an arrow. This arrow is going to keep going to the left forever. So I'm going to go all the way out to negative infinity on the left. That's going to keep going forever. I go all the way through on the x-axis. I have values all the way across on the x-axis. And we've got an arrow to the right, so that means I'm going to keep going out to positive infinity on the right. So my x values go from negative infinity to positive infinity. So if I go from negative infinity to positive infinity, I always go from left to right to set up an interval. We talked about that before. So I go from negative infinity to positive infinity, and I never include infinities, so those are going to be round brackets. You could also see this written as all reals, meaning I have all real values, but for your homework, you're going to want to put it in as negative infinity to infinity. Okay, so the range are the y values. and we're going to go from bottom to top. Okay, so we start here on the y-axis. The lowest value that we can have is at the bottom. The biggest value is at the top. So x goes left to right, y goes from bottom to top. Okay, so if I'm going, how low can I go on the y-axis? Again, I have an arrow going left and down, so it's going to keep going down forever. So on the y-axis, I'm going to go negative infinity. And I'm going to go up all the way through, and this arrow tells me I keep going up and out, so I'm going to go to positive infinity as well. So for the range, I'm also going to have negative infinity to infinity. Okay, also can be written as all reals. So for a line, I have domain and range, I have all the values. I have everything. Okay, so that is pretty straightforward. Let's try one that doesn't have all those values. Okay, so let's look at this picture, kind of U-shaped picture. All right, now whether it has arrows or not, I think on your homework for some of it, it says that assume that there are arrows because like on a graphing calculator, they get cut off. All right, so if they have arrows, that means that they keep going on forever in that direction. So let's see if we can figure out the domain and range for this. So here's our x's, here's our y's. So the domain, we're looking at x values, and we're going to go from left to right. Okay, from left to right. So coming out to the left, how far to the left I go? Does it get chopped off at any point? And the answer is no, because of this arrow, it's going to keep going up and to the left, up and to the left. I can make this bigger, 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 and go as far as I want. So that's negative infinity. And then on the right, it keeps going up and out. So I go all the way through, and I'm going to go to positive infinity as well. So the domain for this, just like for the line, is going to go negative infinity to positive infinity. I always go from left to right, and round brackets because you can never include infinity. Okay, so for the range, we're looking at y values. So we're going to go from bottom to top. All right, so we start at the bottom. Do I have any graph down here? I don't. Okay, see the difference here? There's no arrow pointing down. I don't have a graph down here. I don't have any graph until I get up to here. So what are we at here? We're at positive 2. So my first y value is at positive 2. I don't have any y values below that. There is no graph below 2. So that means that my range starts at 2, and it goes up and up and up and up and up, and the arrows tell me it goes on forever, so it's going to go to infinity. Okay, so I read this to set up my interval. I go from bottom to top, starts at 2, goes to infinity. All right, now I've got to decide the brackets. Infinity is always around bracket because we can never touch it. I do hit 2 at the bottom of this. I do touch 2. That's included, so that's going to be a square bracket. Okay, and notice the difference here. I go from 2 to infinity. I have all of those values. This is not a curly bracket like the points. I would not say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have to list all of them because I have all of the points in here. It's a continuous line. So I have 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. I can't possibly list them all. It's infinite. So I have to write it as an interval. Okay, so that's the difference between the notation here and the notation that we just saw with the points. All right, let's try one more. All right, let's say we have like this. So let's say this is negative 2, 3. No, sorry. I got to reverse that. Negative 3, 2. Negative 1, 0. And let's say this is 4, 6. Okay, so we've got those values, and we've got to decide domain and range. Okay, so remember domain is the x values, range is the y values. All right, so for domain, we're going to go left to right. And this time I don't go forever to infinity. Okay, I don't have any x values out here. It starts at it starts at -3. Okay, I read that from that point. It starts at -3. It goes all the way through to here, and I have +4. So my domain for this one goes from -3 to +4. We can see here that -3 and +4 are included because we have points there. So we're going to use square brackets. Okay, and then we do the same for the y values. We start from the bottom. There's no picture down here. So we go up until the first place that we hit the function is right here. So our first y value is 0. And then we go up, 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 up to here. And our next y value is 6. Okay, our ending y value is 6. So we go from 0 to 6 on the y's. Okay, and you want to make sure that you go left to right and bottom to top, because even if you get the right numbers but you have them backwards, it's going to come out wrong. Okay, so make sure you go left to right and bottom to top.